Jess, I'll
Yeah, of
take it from
course.
here.
Enjoy.
So, yep. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the class. Um, Essentially, today we're going to be talking about portfolios. So, this is pretty useful for anyone who's just getting into the industry, wanting to get their first professional position. But it's also pretty useful for people who are transitioning into the industry, who have a body of work in other areas, but really want to get some of their game work that they've done public facing and available for everyone to see. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so let me know if my screen is visible. Can someone just let me know in the chat? Perfect. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Nick. Perfect. So I'm just going to go ahead with this little presentation just to kick things off. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will come back to it periodically to answer a few questions and then move on. Right? So questions in the chat, and let's begin. All right. So, building a game industry portfolio. First of all, the what you started the presentation with. What is a portfolio website? So, to keep it brief, it's basically something that describes the projects that you've worked on. A lot of the time, when someone is hiring you, they want to know much more than in any other industry. They want to know what are the projects you've worked on. Game dev or any kind of game creative work is just so experiential. It's simply something that you have to learn by doing. You make games to know how to make games better. And pretty much the best way to apply to any position to show that you have what it takes is to show previous projects that you have made. So essentially, a portfolio website has text describing what you've done, video and screenshots, which are visual assets that show games that you've made, projects that you've made, other things, basically describe what a cool game maker you are. So it pretty much showcases your best work in your chosen vertical to the public. And it allows recruiters to evaluate your experience and your talent. One second. So, what is a portfolio website not? So, these are some common misconceptions that I often hear people talk about when mentioning portfolio websites. So, what's the difference between a portfolio website and a resume? So, a resume is pretty much, everyone knows it, the one pager that talks about your work experience. For a lot of jobs, it's the only thing that you give to a potential recruiter so that they can evaluate you. A portfolio website is not a resume. It can include one, but here you're not really talking only about your work experience. You're trying to show people what exactly you made during your work experience. So this can be projects you made solo, stuff you made in a team, or even if your employers give you permission, you can post footage of things that you made at previous jobs. So if you worked at an indie studio, if they made a game and published one, you can put that on your portfolio. The clear difference is that a portfolio shows, it doesn't tell. Your resume tells people what you did, your portfolio shows them what you actually did. The second thing is it's not going to be an exhaustive list of all the projects that you've made since you were, because I see a couple of portfolios sometimes that have a lot of person's really beginning work. So if they've been making games for 3 years, it has everything, every tiny project from when they started out all the way up till their most recent work. So a portfolio doesn't have to document all of this. Typically, it just has to show your best work. This is what the face that you want to show to someone who wants to hire you now, saying, this is what I'm capable of making now. So yeah, not a list of all the projects you made since you were 3 years old. And it's also not a place to promote your games to players. Your target audience here are recruiters, essentially, and recruiters and other game professionals as well, right? People who might want to collaborate with you or people who might want to recommend you to others. So overall, a portfolio website is just a very powerful tool, in my opinion. um, just to be able to get yourself out there. I think it's especially important when you're just starting out in the industry. No one really knows who you are. And just for them to be able to see who you are, what you can make, and put your best foot forward. Right. So yeah, why make one? So this is another question I get asked a lot. I do know a lot of people who don't have a portfolio website or who use different forms of showing their work, like video reels, or just have a resume, right? Some people just stick with that. I think the games industry favors portfolios a lot and even expects them sometimes for a couple of key reasons. The first is that you have projects that are highly visual. So games are visual, games are artistic. People will often evaluate a game just based on how it looks. And you can't properly appreciate that on a resume. Like if you're in other programming jobs or software jobs, um, you can't really, like an app, every app looks often the same. If you're doing back end work, you can't really show that on a portfolio. But you can show games on it. Games have pizzazz, they have visual appeal. And it's so much easier to evaluate someone's work by looking at the game that they made than by watching them describe it in a lot of text on the resume. The second point is games are interactive. You can actually have a recruiter play your game and decide whether to hire you or not, especially if it's hosted on the web, like on itch.io or any other browser site. So very often, if I want to hire someone, I might just click on the itch.io profile, play one of their games, and then evaluate that for quality. So portfolio is a good place to kind of collect all of the game links together. The third reason is that a portfolio is it's good for collating different types of projects and for collating in-depth information about the process. So aside from just showing people what you made, you want to show people how you made it. What was your process for designing it, conceptualizing it? What are some of the hurdles you faced along the way? Because these are things that potential employers are looking for. They want to know how you faced problems, how you overcame them. And a portfolio website is a great way to kind of showcase this process. You can have sub pages that talk about some of this stuff. And the final reason, one which I think would be pretty relatable to a lot of people here. If you're just starting out in the industry, usually don't have a very thick resume of prior work, right? You're not going to have 10 different names in your resume with lots of dates of who exactly hired you because breaking into the game industry is hard. A lot of the time it's circular dependency. People don't hire you unless you have work, and people don't give you work unless they hire you. Um, but a great way to just break in is to show that you can make games. So even if those are jam projects, projects with your friends, solo projects, you can put those on your portfolio and you can wow people with those. You don't need to have a huge thick resume just to get noticed. So I think these to me are highly compelling reasons to make one. I pretty much recommend that any junior who I know who is looking to break in, I recommend that they make one. I tutor them in making one. So yeah, if any questions at this stage, I'd be happy to answer. Okay, I see nothing in the chat, so it seems like pretty clear for me. All right, moving on. For whom do we make a portfolio website? So I mentioned this before, but when you're making one, always consider your primary target audience, and those are recruiters or employees, basically people who are in a position to hire you. So people who will be looking at your portfolio could also be the general public, could be peers, fellow colleagues. But when you're making it, the primary people who you want to see it are people who can benefit you, people who can recommend you. And for that, they have to essentially see something that stands out to them, something that shows them who you are in an honest way, but also what you're capable of doing. So the key point, which I can't mention enough here, is time. So I think everyone who works in the game industry they have their special journey, they have their unique journey, and they want to talk about it. But the cold reality is that recruiters often evaluate dozens of portfolios in a single sitting. Typically, if this is an indie game studio, for example, they pull somebody who is happily coding, happily making a game, pull them from the regular job, and then they say, "Hey, you have to review these 12 applications," and then this person is looking to get done with those applications as soon as possible so they can get back to actually doing what they like, which is making games. So that leads us to the fact that recruiters have a very small attention span. In other words, they're not going to read your portfolio for ages. If you include, I don't know, pages and pages of text, which might be relevant to you, but they're not going to see it if they don't see something that attracts their attention almost immediately. So recruiters are actively looking for specific things that make you a good hiring choice. But since they have a very small attention span, it's your responsibility to focus on showing it to them as soon as possible. So I see a lot of portfolios kind of fail to grab my attention simply because they're not built with a recruiter in mind. They're sort of a flow of consciousness stream of content, but it's hard to sort through them to actually find the actual projects, the actual stuff that's needed there. So essentially, before we delve deeper into portfolios themselves, I thought I'd lay out some of the basic requirements. So building a portfolio can be thought of as essentially a three-stage process, which I call fishing for recruiters. So you're essentially fishing. You're going to set up a lure, then you want them to bite the hook, and then you're going to reel them in. Also, in the chat, do let me know if you're hearing some disturbance in my mic. It's early morning here, and the street dogs are barking fairly loudly, as is their usual habit. So, in case you're not able to understand something I'm saying, there's background noise, just let me know and I can fix it. All right. So we have stage one, the lure. So when a recruiter scans your portfolio, you have about 5 seconds to grab their attention. Different sources will cite different things. Some people say 2 seconds, some people say 10. The point is you have very little time. If someone who's looking to hire you has 100 applications or 50 applications to process, and they're just clicking on links and scrolling through them, in 5 seconds, if they don't see something promising, they're just going to close your site. So your site needs to look interesting and promising enough for them to want to look deeper after 5 seconds. So typically that means that your projects, which is the actual point of the portfolio, your projects have to be visible as soon as possible. As soon as a person looks at the site, bam, they have to see your projects right there and not hidden behind 3 clicks or hidden behind a tiny menu in the top. It's sad because a lot of those portfolios might simply, might have great content, but they just have very few people seeing them just because it's hard to actually access those projects, which I think is pretty sad. I mean, if you have good work, you shouldn't be getting ignored, right? You should not be getting dismissed on job applications just because your portfolio isn't accessible. So I think this is a point to continuously reiterate when you're making your portfolio. Ask yourself, are my projects visible? Is someone coming to the site being able to see them as soon as possible? The second point here is just visual appeal, right? You want your portfolios to catch the eye, and visuals catch the eye much better than text. So text is for your resume. Keep it as minimal as possible, and just the more of your projects you can show, the better it is. So yeah, basically what I talked about, projects should be immediately visible or accessible in a maximum of 1 click. And as far as possible, show and don't tell. Keep your text concise and add more visuals, GIFs, or videos. A key point here that I want to mention is when you're making a portfolio, you don't need a super fancy website. You don't need, I mean, I see a lot of example portfolios, for example, being this web dev miracles. Like they have these, so you scroll here, these images, fade in from here, the text animates from the side. You have this little animated person doing something here, and then you scroll, and then so these glitzy portfolios have visual appeal, but that can work against you because they take attention away from your projects. You ideally want a recruiter's eyes to move to your projects as soon as possible. And if they're stuck navigating amongst your very pretty animated backgrounds, it's going to be a visual overload for them, and it's possible that that also may be a reason for them to slip by. In my personal opinion, just having a minimalist portfolio is far better than using something extremely bright or glitzy. And that's a good thing because that also makes making a portfolio much more accessible for anyone. You don't need to be a web dev expert. You don't need to be a web UX expert. You just need to make an extremely simple site using extremely simple tools, and that will get you far. You don't need to get too technical about it. So it's fine, by the way, if you don't remember all of these points, because we will be reiterating them when we actually look at some portfolios, for examples. So your stage 2 is the hook. So here, a recruiter looks for one strong project. So they've already taken their 5 seconds, they've glanced at your portfolio, and something attracts them, right? Something seems interesting. There's a project there which looks really colorful, which has this character jumping around doing interesting things. I want to see more. So that's the state of mind in which they're in now. So the key point here is that they will take one project and they will evaluate this project and judge your abilities and talents based on that. Kind of unfair, but that's how the amount of time and energy they have at this stage. So, which is why I think it's important to make sure that your portfolio always has your best work. And because you want to avoid the chance that you put a less than ideal project that you made, maybe something you made 2 years back or 3 years back. If you put something like that and a recruiter happens to click that first instead of your good project, then they are going to form a judgment of you based on that project. So I think typically 2 to 3 projects of your best work is more than enough for any portfolio. You don't need to fill it with tens and hundreds of projects. Just not required. So until this point, in these 5 seconds, remember that your recruiter has not read a single line of text. They probably maybe a few words of text at the most, but most likely they haven't even read anything. They've decided to stay with your portfolio longer simply because they've seen something that looks attractive. So once you have their attention, now this text starts to matter, right? At this stage, the recruiter might spend about 1 minute reading through your text and looking through your projects. So whatever content you have here now matters. So typically, when it comes to text, I mean, we'll look at these guidelines in more detail in the next section. But it's important to cover these 3 basic points when you talk about your project. What is your project? Why is this project important to you? And what was your role in defining this project? Team projects are usually great for portfolios because recruiters are usually looking, especially for juniors, they want to know that they can work together with others. Games are extremely collaborative. Sometimes I feel like, at least in my job, collaborating with people is like 90% of the difficulty, and then technical skills are like 10 or 15%. So any kind of team project should probably come right up there on your portfolio, simply because of how valuable they are. It's also helpful to show your process. So we'll get more into that and how strategies you can use to do that. But you don't have to just show finished work. If someone clicks on a project, they want to see work in progress. They want to see the stages of the project, how it came from concept to prototyping to final product. Showing your process is a good way to show that you know your skills. You not only know how to do something, but you know how to explain how you did it. And text can also help to mention awards or acknowledgements, basically talk about how your project was received by others. Because often the easiest way to show that your project is important, that it matters, is to show that someone liked it. You could talk about how players enjoyed it. You could say it got good reviews from players. You can talk about how many downloads it got, whether it won any minor competition. It doesn't matter how minor it is. Any kind of award or acknowledgement gives your project credibility. And finally, your reality. So if the recruiter has seen your project and is visually appealing, if they read through it and they're impressed, at this point they move on to look at more projects. And now that they're already invested in you, they will spend as much time as necessary eating up all the content that you have to show them. So now is when they get interested in who you are. What's your life story? What are your values? Are you a good fit for their organization? So at this, only after your project should you include any information about, detailed information about who you are. What do you like? What are your hobbies? Do you like pizza with mushrooms, without mushrooms, with pineapple, without pineapple? But ideally, you don't lead with any information other than your projects, because if if the recruiter doesn't see your project and is not impressed by it, they're not going to be invested in anything else that you do. So at this stage, you want to show breadth of work. So here's where the number of projects come into play. So I wouldn't say the more projects, the better. I think between 3 to 6 is a pretty good number to have. And ideally, they should show breadth of work. They should show the different kinds of things you're capable of doing. They need to have consistent quality and more details about the process, how you did it becomes important here. So this essentially covers the introduction to what a portfolio is, why you need it, who it's for, and the strategy that you're using, strategy you're running through your head whenever you're designing any element in this portfolio. In the next stage, we're going to move over to look at some example portfolios to kind of see how all this theory applies in practice. But before that, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and I can answer them live. All right, Brittany asks, how would a narrative designer make the portfolio look more visually appealing then? Most of the work is written, and if the game isn't published yet, we don't have access to screenshots. I think this can be tough. In general, putting games that aren't published on your portfolio is tough simply because, like you said, you don't have access to the visual materials that are actually necessary for it. Usually, my personal strategy is just to request. Most people understand. So even if a project is in development, you could request that, hey, I want to put this on my portfolio. I need some screenshots of my work, some video of my work. Can you send me anything that you think would be appropriate? I think so far, most employers of mine have been understanding, and they have sent me work in progress screenshots, video, whatever it is, something that lets me show off what I've done on the game, even if it's basic. I think if you're interviewing specifically for a narrative designer position, you can simply have videos and screenshots of in-game text being actually used in your game. Including text samples from your game could also be viable. I think the role of narrative designer is also important because what makes a good narrative designer is being able to take written material and accurately combine that with game mechanics in real-time play. So to show good narrative design, it does help to have visuals to show not only what kind of content you're integrating, that is to say the writing itself, but to show how that content looks in game. So a great example is simply, one particularly pithy dialogue delivered in game with some characters on the screen. That's great content for it. But yeah, if the game isn't published yet, you do need to kind of make your case to the people who are in charge of the game. Say, I really need this on my portfolio. Can I have some visual material that represents this? It doesn't always have to be finished gameplay footage. It can be work in progress stuff. It can be logos. It can just be assets. It can include links to the official page of the game where they can read more about it. But something visual is usually a necessity just to get people to look. Does that answer your question, Brittany? Yeah. So yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. So Austin Rhodes asks, what's a good way to show the process description and details of projects on a portfolio? Would links to screenshots of a design document or Trello work? This is for a developer. Mm, so we'll cover that in a moment. I'll be looking at some example sites and how they handle uh, process description. But specifically, I find that design documents are just not very helpful. The reason is because they are just huge loads of text. And a lot of the text is just not relevant to process. It's a design document is meant to be a Bible. It describes everything in your game in excruciating detail. And recruiters are typically not, even the most patient recruiters are not going to have time to run through all of that text. Um, I think for a developer, the best kind of process description is just to say how you came up with code architecture. So that could just include, screenshots of or flowcharts, maybe diagrams of how you plan the code, early work in progress footage. But more importantly, would be you including some concise text and talking about your process. So essentially, talk about, okay, what are the goals for this project? How did those goals influence the way I approach the code? How did I break up the code architecture? What were some ways, some problems I faced, some systems that were particularly difficult to handle? The visuals don't always have to be of code because let's face it, code is not particularly riveting to look at for someone, especially a non-coder. I think it makes a lot more sense to simply show work in progress footage of the game as a visual aid to the text that's talking about your process. So if you talk about a particularly difficult system that you had trouble with, right? Maybe it's a tower defense game and you had trouble making sure the projectiles actually hit enemies. You need the towers to essentially predict enemy movement and shoot ahead of the enemy to actually connect with the enemy. So having a simple GIF showing a tower shooting ahead of an enemy and the bullet connecting with them when the enemy actually reaches that spot, that's a strong visual, and that conveys the gist of what your text is talking about. Your text can talk about the actual experience you had, what problems you faced, how did you solve it technically with code, how did you implement that, what strategies did you use to prevent bugs, and so on. So that would typically be a separate page from your main portfolio so that the recruiter who's interested in the process can click on the link and then read through all of that. At that point, they're hopefully already invested in it, having seen the main games. Does that answer your question, Austin? All right, thanks a lot. So anything else? If not, we can move on. You can ask questions through the chat or unmute yourself and ask it live. Okay, I think we are good to go. Let's move on then. So about this. So let's look at a couple of portfolios first. So first, let's do some self-promo. Here's my portfolio. So this is something that, some people have told me that it's a halfway decent portfolio. Yeah, not fishing for compliments here, but I thought this would be a good portfolio to kind of use as a guide, simply not because it's the best portfolio out there, but simply because A, I know it well, and B, it's minimalist, but it gets the job done, which I think is essentially what I'm trying to convey through this class. You are free to make your portfolio as fancy as you want. It should be as aesthetically appealing as you want, but even a very minimalist portfolio works. So that's kind of what this showcases. So over here, I think key salient features is that typically you always start with something about you. So projects are right here. As soon as you scroll, you get to see them. But it helps to know the context for the project. So typically that includes visually a photo of you. Some people aren't comfortable including a picture of themselves online, and I can understand that not everyone has to. But I find it's just a very easy way to connect with your audience, to have them remember. So even if they don't remember your name, they remember your face and they say, ah, that's a portfolio with that guy on the cover. So typically a photo of you is pretty helpful, and a very short introduction of who you are. Typically, this can include, what you do, what your values are, and the kind of role that you're in. So here's essentially my introduction here, and then we move straight to projects. So here, in terms of projects, we have something visually appealing as soon as we at the get-go, right? We have an auto-playing video. So auto-playing video grabs your attention, right? Visually, it instantly shows you what this game is about. And that gets you curious enough. That gets you past the 5-second mark, the interest mark. And now a recruiter wants to know, okay, this game looks interesting. What is it about? And that's where our text copy comes in, right? So typically here you're talking about achievements of your game, no matter how small they are, just slap them on there. A simple description of the game, and most importantly, what you worked on. So in this case, I worked on level and system design, gameplay programming. Ideally, I would remove this and more part, I would specify, but that's just me nitpicking. Tools is helpful. If someone's hiring you for Unity role, they want to know that you made your project in Unity. And your team size is helpful as well, because it shows that, hey, I worked in a team. I know how to communicate with another human being without everything blowing up. This is a skill that I have. Seriously, I would say don't undersell the ability to make a game in a team. If you can make a game with someone else and if your whole project doesn't blow up, that's a skill. And that's a very marketable skill. So yeah, I think also mentioning what you worked on is highly important for a project. This is a very common mistake I see in a lot of portfolios, that they just put a game out there, put some marketing copy for the game, but they don't say what you made in that game. And that will likely cause a recruiter to just dismiss the whole project simply because they don't know if the work that's on your page has been done by you or if it has been done by somebody else. Because games often have a lot of people on the project, right? If there are 10 people or 100 people making a game, a recruiter can't assume that you made everything. You need to tell them exactly what you worked. So that could be something more detailed, like I designed 5 levels from this game, or something like that. So without that, sometimes really good projects just get ignored because a recruiter is like, oh, this looks good. It looks too good. Did he really make it by himself? Come on, I'm not sure if he has that level of talent. I'm just going to assume that someone else made it and she just played a small part in it. If you did make it all on your own, you don't want that assumption to be made. Likewise, if you have a big project that many people contributed on, you don't want to take credit accidentally even for something someone else made. So be really clear about what exactly you were. And here we have a second project, again, the exact same format. Key points here are again links to your store page. So a recruiter who has passed the hook stage, which has stayed on your page for about a minute, once they are in the reel it in stage, they will probably want to check out your store page. Having your game published is just a very good way to establish credibility. So itch.io is pretty much the easiest way to publish anything. Anyone can do it. It's like 5 clicks. Make sure that almost any project that you have which is in playable condition should be published on itch.io. It should have a link to play in browser, ideally right here. Simply because a lot of recruiters surprisingly are actually going to play your game. They might not have patience to read through all of your text, but they will click your itch.io link. They will try to play your game for 5 minutes or so. And having that link is super important. There have been many times where I've applied for a position and then someone will reach out to me from the company. Sometimes even the head of the studio will reach out and say, hey, sorry, we couldn't offer you the position, but I loved your game. I played it and I had so much fun. Hope maybe I'll reach out to you next time. So don't underestimate that. Here we have more projects, more projects. So this is one example of a project that isn't released yet, but I did ask my team lead for permission to use this image over here. So there's no public facing work of this game yet, but they graciously agreed, said, yeah, you can take one good screenshot from the game, concept art, put it on your portfolio, it's fine. So this is one way to have visually appealing demonstrations of work that is not yet in the public domain. Yeah, even for this project, I did ask, before it was in the public domain, I asked my team lead if it was okay to post some stuff about it. So at this stage, if I put on my recruiter hat, I see video, okay, game looks interesting, I'm in, 5-second mark. Next, I read through one project, maybe two projects. Right now, these read more links don't work. If you click it, you just get to, oops, this section of site is under repair. So that is a negative point for me, -1 point, Surya, bad portfolio practice. I would like to have something readable there, simply because a recruiter who's getting in that hook stage wants to know more, right? They want to know my process behind how I made this game, what were the challenges. They want to know if I was a good level designer or whether I'm just posting a project for the sake of it. So one negative point for this portfolio would just be the fact that there's no material. There should be. And so now they've gone through this. Maybe they're hooked. Maybe if they're looking for someone to make multiplayer games, like the next MMORPG, they're probably like, no, this guy doesn't have the experience I need. Move on. But if they're looking to make a puzzle educational game and they want to hire someone for that, then they say, here's a puzzle game he's made. Here's an educational game he's made. I'm hooked. I want to know more about this. So then we move on. So the tail end of the portfolio is essentially more details. Now that the recruiter actually cares about you, that they're invested in you after looking at your projects, now they want to know more. So maybe they want to see some jam games. They want to see what you can make in a limited space of time, right? Maybe they want to reach out to you for freelance work. It's another ugly missing image, but maybe they want to know what kind of community outreach you did. The sky's the limit, right? After your project page, I honestly have no recommendations on what to put. You can put whatever you like. And if the recruiter is interested in you, I mean, keep it professional, obviously, right? Keep it, you don't need to post your Twitter rants on your portfolio, but once the recruiter is invested in you, they've seen your work, now they want to know a little bit more about who you are. So here comes text. Here comes random facts about me, what my origin story was, what my values are as a designer, what are some of my hobbies. So this helps people get to know me. And then skills. So I would not lead with skills on a portfolio. Ideally, this should be kept for your resume. But once people have seen your projects, then yes, they care enough about you to want to know, okay, what are the skills that you brought to those projects? So I have a little bit about my skills. And finally, we have the contact form, which is the most important part. Once someone sees your portfolio, they want to be able to contact you. And your portfolio should have very, very, very obvious ways of reaching out to you. The last thing you want is a recruiter impressed by you, and then they can't find an email anywhere. And then they're like, I'll look a bit later. I'll reach out to him later. And then they forget. And then you don't get reached out to for that job. So social bars up here, email over here, contact form at the bottom, GitHub, Twitter, LinkedIn. Redundancy, basically, as many ways as possible for someone to just reach out and say, hey, I like your work. Can I talk to you? So this is just an example of one portfolio, kind of talking about a few of the concepts I mentioned earlier, how you start off with the lure, you're luring them in with your attractive game content. Then you're hooking them, you're telling them, this is not just attractive game content, this is something I made, this is how well it did. These are some of the process I went through. This is some of the things I did on those projects. And then finally, you're reeling it in with more projects, breadth of work, showing that you can do different types of projects. And then talking more about yourself, your values, your community outreach, your skills, anything else that you think is relevant to understanding who you are as a professional. So at this point, Any further questions? Anything that you guys would like to know about? Anything you're not quite sure of or would like some more clarification on if you were making a portfolio? Thanks, Nick. Thanks very much. Kirk, that's a really great question. I'm going to read it out. How important is a custom domain for a website like this, and is it worth the investment? So I've received split opinions on this. Some really senior designers have told me that I don't care if you have a custom domain. I don't care whether this is wixsite.com, whether this is games.suryanarain.com. Um, I think a lot of people are aware that a lot of people entering the game industry don't have a lot of free cash to throw around on website domains, and it just makes sense to. It's not that big of a deal. So senior people have told me that they don't care. They will hire you based on your work, not based on your domain or any fancy stuff like that. However, I just feel like custom domains are helpful in branding simply because they keep your name as the sole focus of your URL. So if you are kind of sending a link to somebody, it kind of makes it more clickable and it's shorter. I think it also just preserves your personal branding. It's really easy to send around. Um, and it's kind of unfair, but the fact is that there's this weird association between professionalism and paying for something. So if you have .wixsite.com on your URL and you have a big ad banner that says this site was made with Wix, it can be perceived as less effort than if you have your own custom domain. People interpret the fact that you're willing to pay for a custom domain as kind of proof that you're invested in this, in your site and your work and your career, which to me is unfair, but you also can't control how other people see it. My point of view on this issue would essentially be if you can afford it, yes, it's a worthy investment. It's not money wasted. If you don't have it, it's not going to be that much of a problem. I think casual viewers are the ones who are most likely to judge based on domain. But if you're actually applying to jobs and you've already applied to them under a formal application, that's going to matter a lot less, whether you have a custom domain or not. Yep. So Kirk, does that answer the question? Yeah, I'm going to assume that it did. Yeah, Brittany asks, is Wix free or paid? So Wix is free. Anyone can make a site with Wix. The only condition is that if you want to connect a custom domain, that's paid. And they have a tiny little ad banner on top, which tells you, it doesn't show ads on your site, but it does say that this site was made by Wix and then includes a clickable link for Wix. So basically, if you can't pay for it, they will use this tiny top section of your screen, this section right up here. They will put a little banner over there and they will use that to advertise themselves. Also, by the way, just let me know if my cursor visible? Because if I'm pointing to something on the screen, I just want to know that you guys. Cursor is visible. Perfect. Thanks so much, Nick. And yeah, so that's about Wix. There are free options for making portfolios as well, but usually I found that they either lack in power and flexibility or they are very technical. So I think if you're a programmer, you know your way around web dev, then GitHub Pages is just the best option you have. But if you don't want to deal with the technical hassle, you don't want to write code, Wix is a good balance. Yeah. And yeah, like Nick says, a custom domain is around $20 for a year. You can get a better one on a deal. Uh, Wix Premium, which you need in order to connect your custom domain, is also around $20. So it totally comes to around $40 of investment in your portfolio site, which, given the utility it actually has for you, is not that much, in my opinion. I would say it's usually worth it. So yeah. Noor, on the difference between game design and development, if possible, I would answer that question at the end of the session, just to keep the topic portfolio focused for now. But if I have time at the end of the session, Crystal, Google Sites is free and Google domain is $12 a month. Yes, I was very tempted to actually conduct this class with using Google Sites just because it's free and it's actually really nice to use. It wasn't around when I made my portfolio. But to avoid learning a whole new pipeline, I just stuck with Wix. But yes, Google Sites is a great option for everyone listening. If you want to try it out, it's very minimalist, simple looking, but it's free and it's good. So should the first post, Sam asks, so should the first post be on your best foot forward, having it go from best to worst of your projects, or is there any strategic way to place your projects and laying them out? Yeah, I would say that the first post should be the project that you're putting your best foot forward on. It should ideally be the project that, like, if let's say someone from a studio, senior person came up to you and said, "Hi, I want to hire you. Can you show me one of your projects?" That should be the project that's first on your list. I think like maybe at least 80% of the time, the first project on your portfolio is the one that people are going to click on first. Just that's human nature, right? The first thing in the list is what they click on. And the first thing they click on is going to be the first thing they read. And that will fill up all of their time and attention span. So ideally, it should be your best foot forward. I would say for projects, try to avoid including your worst projects at all. Include around a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 5 projects, which are all around the same level of quality. It's okay to include some that are not the best of the best a little further down the line, but try not to include anything that looks unpolished, anything that looks unfinished, odd, or doesn't embody the quality of work that you want to display, because there is no guarantee that a recruiter could scroll all the way down and click on your worst project first. You have no guarantee of that. So ideally, consistent quality is important. If you're in doubt about a project and you already have at least 2 other projects in your portfolio, you just don't need to include. That's my opinion. Right. Yeah, 12 a year. Yeah, the domain is cheap. There's also today's sponsor, Squarespace. Yeah, there are tons of web hosts. Originally, I was going to dedicate a section to them. I did some research. There are way too many of them. I think people can do their own research and figure out, apart from Wix, what are the good options. Yeah. So back to Brittany. If it did work, would the read more section be where you put process screenshots? Yes, exactly. So the read more would be where I put my processes, where I put my work in progress. For that particular game, the one right over here, which is confirmed, typically I would put in my level building process. So it would show me in the Unity editor, because this game had a custom level editor specifically made for people to make levels in Unity. So I would probably show that. I would show some of the bugs that I faced, maybe some hilarious gifs of bugs. Some of the early screenshots, so what the previous art style looked like, why we shifted to a new art style, what are the improvements that we gained from that. So essentially kind of you show your best work on the cover, and in read more, you can show what didn't work and contrast it to what did work, to show that you can take something half-baked and turn it into something full-baked. So in one of the other sites we'll take a look at, we will talk a little bit more about how you can structure your process. Right, Notion site, Google Domains is shutting down. I'm not aware of that, but possible. Yeah, I can take a look. Okay, yeah, Paul says it as well, so it's probably true. Yeah, so in that case, can't rely on Google Domains there. Probably they're gonna raise the price. Yeah, icons are great. Icons are just very cheap and easy way. Just pull them in, stick them on your page. Suddenly things look more professional. So moving on, in the interest of time, let's move on to looking at another portfolio. So if this is a design and dev portfolio, now I'm going to look at an art portfolio. So over here is Colleen. Colleen is from IGA as well. She graciously gave me permission to use her portfolio for this. So you can see here that she uses wixsite.com. and she uses the Wix. This is what the Wix banner looks like in a finished site. Little tiny thing on top. It's not too obtrusive, and personally, I don't mind. I wouldn't judge someone based on this. So here the approach is a little bit different. So instead of having your projects immediately available here, you have resume, break time, essentially dividing your portfolio into pages. So personally, I mean, my personal preference would just be the single layout, the single page, because it's easily scrollable. It requires 0 clicks to find your projects. But this isn't too bad either. I think the main benefit I find for this type of portfolio is simply that when you have multiple verticals that you work on, it's helpful to segregate those into different pages. Simply because if you're being hired for a 2D art job, no one wants to scroll through your 3D art trying to find your 2D art, and vice versa. If you're being hired for 3D art, people don't want to look at your illustrations first. They want to look at your 3D art first. So some people go as far as to recommend making separate portfolios entirely for different verticals. So you have a 3D art portfolio in a separate website, a 2D art portfolio, or a programming portfolio in a separate website. But I think this is a nice compromise. You know, have your picture and about section here, and then you have one click leading you to where you want to go. And you have a resume link here as well. My one criticism about this is just break time over here. Coming to your site for the first time as a recruiter with my little recruiter hat on, I don't know what break time is. I'm not invested in it. I don't know if this is the name of a game. Is it just, you know, if I want to break, do I click this? It's fairly unclear. So I would say definitely call this, you know, game projects or something else. Ideally, don't include sort of naked buttons like this right on your homepage without any context. Moving into 3D art. Does it open? So yeah, one thing that really impressed me about this portfolio was simply this. So you have the Sketchfab embedded in Wix. For anyone who does 3D modeling work, this is just probably the best way to show off your 3D models on a portfolio, because I can drag it around. I can click, I can look at whatever I want. And for basic modeling work, I think this shows work really well, better even than a video. And here we have process work. So you can not only see that not only is this a model, you see the thought process. You see that, okay, these hinge pieces were initially done in ZBrush. That means this person knows how to use ZBrush. Exported out to be retopologized. From there, I took the low poly model into Substance Painter, baked the high poly to the low. So this again shows the basic understanding of the 3D modeling process. You know, this person probably knows their stuff, right? They're talking about the process in a very concise way, and they're showing the finished product, exactly what it looks like. You can move out, and then here's another one. You can see this one had a different approach. For this approach, this person didn't want to use ZBrush. Instead, they wanted to create a low poly mesh, then use Substance Painter, and then outline in Photoshop. So this shows an alternate procedure. This shows that this person seems fairly skilled. They know how to do it with ZBrush. They know how to do it without ZBrush. Even as a complete 3D art illiterate, I'm still impressed. And Colleen also has a link for further process work, someone to look at even more of it. And here you have reference images, text. So to answer, I think, whose question was it earlier? Brittany's question about how you would include process work. I think it wasn't Brittany's, it was, whose was it? Austin, yeah. So this is a great way to show process works. For programming, you might use different embeds, a different sort of look to it. But essentially here you can see how you started off, which is essentially reference images. And then in process screenshot, this is just geometry from Blender, from Maya, sorry. And here you can see text that's showing exactly how the process was made. So to economize time, I modeled half the object and mirrored it over. Okay. That's basic stuff, but it kind of shows that you know the basics. You know that you can separate side panels and doors. So here the visual just kind of explains the text and shows visually that, yeah, this is a well-modeled stuff. This is separating the pieces that need to be separated, modeling, mirroring, all of that stuff. I can't comment too much on the 3D stuff, but I can comment on how well it's presented, and it's presented really well. Essentially, this is, I think, probably a really, really good example of process work. The text is not too much, it's straight to the point, and the visuals really do show off exactly what's happening in the text. It's a good length as well. I think when it comes to process work, you can go in depth if you have good visuals to support it. And here the visuals are keeping my interest. Even as someone who's not invested in 3D modeling, I can still read through and enjoy this. If I was a professional 3D modeler looking to recruit this person, I would definitely be reading all of this. Yeah, so this is a pretty good example of process work. And we have more work over here, more work over here. Let's move on to 2D art and illustration. Right. So over here, I'm going to turn it over to the audience. Based on everything we've been talking about so far, presentation, my explanation of it, what we talked about, the lure and the hook. What's one thing in this scene that feels like it's not optimal for a portfolio? If you had to add something to this page to make it more scannable for a recruiter, what would it be? Let's listen for the first answer in the chat. Video or GIF? Yes, that's a great one. Possibly better labeling. Could you specify, Austin? Break up the images with some description on the image. Yeah, that's a good one as well. Bigger, better icons. I think the icons are already pretty big. You can't get an icon bigger than this. Maybe some of this. I feel like it's at the right size. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. Restructure the landing page to show titled images instead of buttons. You mean these, Kirk? These should be titled. Oh, you mean the landing page? Yeah. So yeah. So right now, the landing page is a separate thing, but I'm talking specifically about this page. Let me shrink the chat window. You can see. Yeah. This 2D art illustration. What would you say could be improved? Context for break time again, Nick. Yep. Link to the game. Yep. So yeah. So my biggest gripe here is just context for break time and link to the game. I look at the art, I see, oh, it's great art, but this was actually art that was integrated in a game, and I don't have context on that. It's as someone wanting to hire a 2D artist, I don't just want to see 2D art. I want to see how this person is able to use 2D art in a finished quality game, because that proves that they can collaborate, that they know how to talk to somebody else, get that person to actually use their art. Those soft skills are proven when you show a game that you actually made art for and show the visuals of your art within that game. It also shows that you understand the pipeline. So the pipeline, by pipeline, I mean the entire production process, starting from concept to the 2D art that you do, to the programmer who's going to integrate your 2D art. If you show your work in a finished game, that shows that you understand the game development pipeline, you know how to make art, you also know how to make art in a format that people can actually integrate. So I think the biggest thing, like Nick and Mary Ellen said, yeah, context for break time and a link to the game. A link to the game would be great over here. Paul's suggestion is good as well. Break up the images with some descriptions on the images. Yeah, because right now, I think this one has some description, break time tutorial art. So it tells me vaguely what this is about. Sample prop assets is also good. But yes, some more detail and dialogue description would be great. And as Brittany Lindo says, yes, video or GIF would be great. Some of this 2D art, for example, if you have UI, if this 2D art was actually shown in the tutorial, and I see this art on one side, on the other side, I see a GIF of the same art within the actual game and the player actually interacting with it as a tutorial. That would be great for me. Would be pretty cool. Kirk also said the layout is a bit close, maybe some spacing in a short description. I would agree with that. So, in all fairness to Colleen, when I asked her to use her portfolio, her first comment was, "Yeah, I need to expand break time and I need to give it its own section where I talk about all of this stuff." So she's quite aware of these mistakes. Sorry to harp on them, but this is just educational stuff for the class. So, apart from that, I think the assets themselves are amazing. They are a good selection of assets. We move on to concept art and client work. Here again, I have the same problem. That looking at this is great. I want to know what project it came. I would again tell the whole group that client work is great to have descriptions about in your portfolio because it shows that you're a professional. It shows that you're a professional. You know how to work like a professional. That you know how to take a spec from somebody, how to deliver it to satisfaction, and how to get paid. And those are great skills to have. And if I see this, I'm very curious to know what kind of project was it for. If I click this, I want to be able to know more about it. But all I see is an image here. So that's not satisfactory. So definitely, even if it's an art portfolio, like I get that a lot of art portfolios have this little panel of images. I think it's great just to showcase the breadth of your work, the different kinds of work that you have. But at least somewhere there should be a way I can know more about this. Same with illustration. Again, this is my only critique. Here for animation, we have a demo reel. I can play this over here. And I think a demo reel is a great way to show animation work or any kind of visual artwork in general. Simply because it's visual, it showcases everything.
You know, I'm still no closer to figuring out your secret because I don't have a secret.
Most of the time, a recruiter is not even going to watch your entire reel, but they are going to do this. They are going to click through your timeline, see a couple of things. If they see something interesting, they will click, they will watch it going on. It's a good way to showcase breadth of work, and it's also quite visual. So this is a plus from me. Sam asks, could we get links to yours and Colleen's? Yes, I will be providing all the portfolio links in the chat. And at the end of the session, I'll also have a resource page which will have links to all of these. So you won't lose that system. All right. Finally, we are going to go over one more dev page. I had a few portfolio pages queued up. We might get to them later if we have the time. But yeah, I'll link them all at the end. Here's another dev portfolio. This is a programming portfolio for the programming guys out there. Once more, I will rearrange things a little bit here. And yes, answers in the chat. What do I think could be improved in this portfolio? I'm going to minimize the chat for now, just so you can see the whole portfolio. Just going to scroll it. What's the first thing that jumps out to you as something that could be improved? I see 2 replies in the chat. I'm going to open it up. Where are the projects? Yes, where are the projects? There's no projects or tabs. Links are tiny, and then you need to scroll to see the text and projects. You need to press button to see anything. Exactly. Basically, this portfolio front page, I think, is not very useful. It's good to it introduces you the person's name. It kind of tells them, okay, this is a game developer. It gives a contact. All that's lovely, but you need visible links. I can bet that out of 3 recruiters, 2 of them are just going to leave because they don't see this tiny thing over here in the corner which says a link to the actual projects. Yes, it frustrates me because this is the class I'm teaching, and there's a lot of good work here. You can see that there are 4, 8, 12, 16 projects, all carefully hand selected and placed here. But out of 3 people, 2 people will never see this, and don't make that mistake. Exactly. I didn't even see the link. Yeah. It's really, really tiny. And I had to search to find it. Don't make your recruiter search. Over here, again, this is, I think the positive thing about this particular layout, I wanted to show one example of this layout. It's a popular one. I think what it does well is it showcases breadth of work. Like you can instantly see that this person has done a lot of different types of projects. What I don't like about it personally is that it doesn't show context. You can't read any description. If you hover over it, sometimes the text on the background interferes badly with the description text over here. But it is a viable option. A lot of you prefer this type of portfolio. I just wanted to show one example of it. And once you click on it, so here you have the full show you. So this shows a video of this particular system, and this shows description on the side. Right. Back to the chat. What could be improved about this page? Yeah, Nick, a great point. Hovering is also not usable on mobile devices. I think on mobile you get to tap it, and then tap it twice to open, tap it once to see the description. But it's very unintuitive, and you'd be surprised how many recruiters will be looking at your portfolio from a phone, simply because they're trying to squeeze in as many portfolio reviews as they can. Maybe they're eating, maybe they're on the way to work, maybe they're driving and looking at the phone one hand. They shouldn't be, but a lot of the time you will have someone scrolling your portfolio with one hand, uh, trying to read and trying to understand your work. So make sure it is usable on mobile. Think from the point of view of a mobile user. Even if it's not ideal, some people will be looking at your site on mobile, and it reflects badly if your site is a jumbled mess on mobile. Brittany, screenshots, process work, where to find the game. Video may be too long, could be shortened a GIF. Paul says more details on what is exactly done. Look at process. What part of this project did they do? Project page should be the landing page. All right. Yeah, I think almost all of this is relevant. The video may be too long. Yes, I do agree that this could be a GIF. I also think the video is decent simply because if we actually scroll ahead in the video, it does show this, which is hard to show in a GIF. It shows that not only did this developer make all of this, they also added customization options. So they added speed, range, color. So the ability to make a particle system, but also make it customizable is useful. So I think the video is fine. I would have liked to see some GIFs alongside, or at least some screenshots. And I think, yeah, Brittany has the award for it, process work, right? Right now, this tells me just what it is, right? This covers, out of the three parts we discussed, this covers, okay, what it is. It is a polished rocket system with aim of maximizing user engagement, da da da. It doesn't say why this is important to you. It doesn't say what you did specifically. Or in this case, it's a personal project. So I'm going to assume that this person did everything in it. But it's probably worth mentioning that your assets are from the Unity Asset Store. Maybe some of your particles are from the asset store. Give credit for those things. Don't make people assume or wonder whether you've made the assets or not. If you have taken the assets from somewhere, there's no shame in taking assets from somewhere. Right? If you're a programmer, you're not expected to make your own 3D art, for example. But you do still need to credit it. I would strongly recommend a brief credit at the bottom of your page saying assets from Unity Asset Store. And Brittany says also good for the recruiter, so they know the person can do this consistently and didn't just follow tutorials and didn't actually learn. Precisely, yes. I think process work is just proof that I knew how to do this. I struggled with it. I worked really hard on it, and this is my end product. It wasn't just a tutorial that I pulled out of my hat or pulled out of Bracky's YouTube channel. You need to be able to show a recruiter that. Yes, Mary Ellen says, what part of this project did they do? That's again, feedback, more details on process. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I would also say that like the first 4 projects on this list, they are really, really high quality. Right? They look polished. And these 4 projects, slightly less polished, least polished. I would say if you have 16 projects, keep 5, keep 6. don't keep all 16 on your front page. There could be value to adding a separate page with some of your early work, so that a recruiter who is already invested, a recruiter who's already gone past the lure and hook stages, who is in the reeling stage, in that case, they may want to see some of your earlier work, knowing that it's your earlier work and not your best work. But on the front page like this, you run too much of a risk of some recruiters accidentally scrolling, accidentally clicking on this and saying, this person's a total beginner, aren't they? You don't want that risk. Would a programmer show their Git as a process? It's not very visual, but I would definitely mention that yes, this was done. The version control system used was Git. And if you did something specific in Git, like that's unique for that project, then definitely I think you would show that as a process. A good example is a team project. I think it's if you are on a team project and if you are managing Git for the team, especially if there are artists and non-technical people involved, mention that. And if I run a studio, I will hire you purely on the basis of the fact that you managed a version control system for a team, because that shit is valuable. So much time gets wasted on a big team because not everyone is familiar with version control, and not everyone is able to pitch in and help other team members with version control. So if you have those skills, those are seriously in demand skills. Nick says, similarly for game producers, is the best option to take pictures of Jira, Trello, or Excel spreadsheets. This is what I did on mine, but I'm not sure it's successful. Running into a bit of a brick wall. I think in your process page, it makes sense to show details of pictures of Jira, Trello, or Excel if you have good text to accompany it. I think a picture of Jira or Trello by itself is just not that riveting, frankly. But it's a good visual way to kind of contextualize what you're talking about through text. I don't have a ton of experience with game production portfolios, but I think the most important thing would simply be process, because it's literally in the role, in the name. Producers are expected to know how to produce something and to know the process for that. I think a good process description would be what sells me on a game production portfolio. And your front page should still have visuals of the game itself. I think producers have just as much credit as the creative team when it comes to the end product. You can't have any complex end product without a good producer, and you deserve to take credit for that. But your production process page should show clearly that what aspects of production you worked on, what are the challenges, how you overcame them, and that would be what would sell me. As for visuals, just have visuals of the project, right? If you're talking about a particular feature that you had to push back on, a particular feature that went through multiple iterations that you had to find the budget for, or you had to push for, include a GIF of that feature. I think that just makes it more visually obvious and shows that the end product justified the process. So you don't need to stick purely to pictures of Jira, Trello, or Excel. But definitely, if you did something unique with production, with project management, if you have a particular spreadsheet that looks visually good, that can kind of showcase a unique aspect of your process, then sure. Brittany, do you think people linking their YouTube devlogs they made in their portfolio would be useful, or just a direct link to YouTube? I would say put a YouTube embed. If you on your process page, most sites allow you to just embed YouTube right there, and then one click, and now they're watching your devlog. Ideally, your devlog is well watchable and not just 20 minutes of rambling, but that's it. All right. I think that another point I just wanted to point out, especially to programmers, is that not all of your work has to come from finished games. I think this is a great example of a portfolio piece that's not a finished game, but just a really good demonstration of a unique effect. I think it does make a programmer hireable when they know how to make a system end to end and can explain the process for that specific system. If it was used in a published game, great, right? All the better. Published games are great. If you don't have published games, it's still okay to put some of this. I would still say that your published games should take priority over these projects. So these two are published games, and if they show good work, I would put them ahead, put this a little further down, but that's just nitpicking. Yeah, Crystal, that's a great point. KPIs. If you can include that in your process, talk about the metrics of the project, how you measured them, how you influenced them, how you advocated for change, how you produce changes in them. Numbers tell a story. Yeah. Okay, we're running a bit off on time, but I think given that we're having such good response, I am going to pick up one more portfolio. Right here. Paul's in the audience here, so forgive me if I point out a few things. I'm not trying to roast, but yeah. So first of all, good things about the portfolio. I think it starts with a really nice about section. I noticed that the about section is slightly shorter than it was this morning. So I would classify that as an improvement. Here we have, I think, a pretty nice photo, pretty nice about. I'm kind of split about the quotes, but I think they're a great way to kind of show your values. I think your about section here is a good chance to show the key things about you. And those are basically, who you are, what you do, what your values are. And these quotes are a good way to show that. Yes, Paul, congratulations on the release, by the way, Rainbow Unicorn Games. I will check that out. So yeah, here are projects. Here I'm once more going to turn it over to the class. If you had to improve something about this, what would it be? So imagine that you're a recruiter, you scroll quickly, you read this guy's about, you're like, oh, okay, interesting. This is the first project I see. What am I thinking? Gameplay video, and Paul says video in capitals. Less text, if the game of the pick is so much text, need link to play game, different picks, all 100%, right? I like this cover image. I feel like this cover image should be there somewhere, but I want video. This is a mobile rhythm survival game. Just reading that pikes my interest because I've never seen a mobile rhythm survival game before. I want to know how this plays. I can't see it. Released on iOS and Android. I don't have store links. Give me store links. Link to play is on right side. I think it's being blocked. Can't click here. Can't click here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Take that back. You have links. Wonderful. Okay. Right. Give of the game. So much text. Yeah. I think, to be honest, I think it's not actually a lot of text. It is maybe slightly a bit on the higher side. But I think one thing that makes it feel like a lot of text is just the font and color contrast. This particular font is great for titles, but the wide spacing of the letters and lack of serifs, I think makes it hard to read at this size. And when a font is hard to read, you're going to feel like there's more text than there actually is. The spacing between the lines and the font breadth, to me, is more of the culprit than the amount of text. I think the amount of text is decent. It tells talks about the genre of the game. I think that the text is actually a great example of a text, simply because it tells you, okay, the first thing is this game achieved something. It was a pitch night winner. And knowing something about the game, I think you're putting a little line saying, that it hit the top 5 in rhythm games on the Play Store. That's a seller, right? That really sells your project and instantly tells people this is a game worth caring about. This is why this game is important to me, which is the second point in our list of 3 points. So here we have what this game is about. Why is this important? Because it's a pitch night winner and because it's released on multiple platforms. It tells me that it's published. That's great. And this tells me a little bit about the game. Again, I feel the font, if it's slightly changed, this would be very readable. And this tells me what did Paul do to make it. Built out core gameplay systems, developed tools, set up Unity input, created audio management, made a test plan. When it comes to writing text for what did you do, a little trick I like to do is sometimes you need a lot of text for this, but if you use the right font, you can simply highlight the action words in bold. So this section over here, built out core gameplay would be bold. Develop tools for the game designer would be bold. Set up Unity input system, bold. Created audio management system, bold. So someone who's skimming will just skim the bold stuff, skip the rest. Someone who wants to read it through will read the whole thing, and it's just a lot more access. So yeah, I think the feedback is great. A lot of the fact that it feels like a lot of text to me is just due to the font. But having good GIFs and videos would be my biggest gripe. Just show me the gameplay. Show me the gameplay. Show me the gameplay. Yeah. Visually, if you add more padding around the image, definitely. Those are little tricks. Yep, you have this game here. Download links. It's a pretty decent selection of projects. I think a good example here projects. If you have devlogs on YouTube, then YouTube. If you do something else for the community, if you manage a Discord community, if you are active somewhere else, these small things I think are good on a portfolio because they are again proof that you know how to pitch yourself and that you can work with others. You know how to manage the public spotlight. If you are a generalist on a team, this for example tells me that okay, I can hire Paul as a programmer, but maybe he knows something about video editing too. Maybe he knows something about marketing if he can pitch his own YouTube channel. So I automatically assume that he has certain soft skills just from this, and it doesn't come across as boasting either. Right? You're just showing exactly what you do. There we go. So this pretty much covers our portfolio. These are the example portfolios I wanted. The al dente one caught my eye. Yes, indeed. That's good feedback. Al dente, the pasta escape platformer for desktop and web. Very catchy. And the image is catchy as well. Paul, yes, the bold thing is something I do on my resume, but definitely, I think that's a big factor that could make it. So I thought at this stage we could take essentially a short break. This covers the initial section. So this basically covers everything that we talked about in our slideshow. So essentially, what is a portfolio website, what it's not, why make one, for whom do we make one? Type it in the chat. Recruiters, that's right. Fact that recruiters have a small attention span, and which is why you have to break things into 3 stages. You have the lure, which is your 5-second period of visual appeal. You have your hook, which is the one strong project, which the recruiter uses as a basis to evaluate who you are. And finally, you have the reel, which is the breadth of your work, the consistent quality of your work, and your process description and details. So after this, we're going to go ahead and start actually making a portfolio. Obviously, what everyone has been waiting for. Sorry to delay it for so long. But if you have any last questions before you actually start making the site, speak now. In the meanwhile, I will take a little water break because I'm parched. So to avoid a sedentary lifestyle, I am going to get up and take a brisk walk around. I'll be back in 2 minutes. I encourage you guys to do the same as well. And I'll be back for questions. So watch the screen. All right, folks, I'm back. Welcome, Blue here. Okay. Right, so we're here for the second part. Gabriel, Stefanik, I have to go to work now. Will this be available to watch that stuff later? Yes, we are recording it in the background. It should be available. I think Jess can coordinate that. But yes, it will be recorded. Should you always have an about you at the start, or is it okay to jump straight into your games? So Sam, I see some portfolios that don't do an about you. I think that's valid. You really don't need to. I would still ask that you at least have some mention of your name somewhere, as well as your target role. So for example, if the screen is still visible, you can see over here I have this banner, which has my photo, name, and tagline and contacts, essentially in this little floating banner here. So if you have this, you don't strictly need an about, uh, because this sets the context. This tells me whose portfolio I'm looking at, how to contact them, and what role they're looking for, or what's their specialization. If you don't include this, the lack of context can be crippling. You can jump straight into projects, but then your recruiter doesn't know you, right? They're looking at a project and thinking, okay, is this guy a programmer? Is he a designer? Who is he? I'm not sure. Forgot his name. Yeah, whatever. You don't want to be forgettable. Yeah, so in my own, I do have this tiny little about section here, but it's pretty small and shrunk on purpose, just so that it gets straight into the games. So that was my intention. Uh, at the most, I think you're allowed one click before you reach your projects. But if you are including a separate project page and buttons to head to your project, try to keep it really, really obvious where your project button is, not up in the side in the menu. Don't rely on menus or these little, right, yeah. Don't rely on this menu. Not everyone looks here first. Keep a nice big project button available, something like in Colleen's portfolio. The one, can I hide this? Please, can I hide this? How do I? Yeah, like where's Colleen's? Here we go. Like, so, there are too many buttons here for my liking, but if you have a really big project button right here next to your about, that's it. All right. Yep. It can be a slightly awkward conversation to have, Brittany, to ask your ex-employer for screenshots, but it's worth it. I've done that as well. I have gone back to people who have done contract work for and said, hey, I have a portfolio now. Can I please have some images? And usually they have been very gracious. And I think everyone has gone through that point in their career where they really need that project in their portfolio. As far as I know, people are pretty good about it. It doesn't hurt to ask, at the very least. All right, so moving on. Right before I move on to the actual building of the portfolio, I will quickly cycle through some content that I haven't yet shown you guys. So these are essentially junior portfolios, more along the lines of what you will be making. There are a few other portfolios I have to showcase, which I'm going to showcase just because I really like the layouts that they have. So this one is a good example of another layout which I haven't showed you guys yet, which is the sliding gallery. So personally, I'm not a big fan of sliding galleries, simply because in every portfolio where I have seen, or at least many portfolios where I see a sliding gallery, this little arrow button over here, this one tiny one in the corner, no one ever sees it. No one sees it. No one clicks it. People sometimes assume you have one project and then scroll down and miss all of the rest of your project in your slideshow gallery. So even though a lot of web providers will provide templates with these sliding galleries because they look nice and are fashionable, I would use them only if you have a page dedicated only to the sliding gallery, which in this case it is. There is no, I can't scroll here at all, right? This is just a single page, no scrolling, I can't get distracted. And there's this very convenient icon layout on the bottom. So this, I don't even need to notice this small arrow here. I just need to click on the project and I get to see the project. So I think this is the only excusable reason to use a sliding gallery in a portfolio, when you have a page dedicated solely to the sliding gallery, and when you have an icon gallery over here, which I can use to pick my projects. So I really like the way this one is done. The descriptions are really good. You can see that there is a description, a process description, or describing exactly what you worked on here, but there are bullet points that are bolded. So as a recruiter who's not yet hooked, if I'm looking at this, I'm going to skip this entire section. My eyes are just going to move with my cursor. And then I'm going to skip straight to the bold stuff, read the bold stuff. Now, once I pass that 1 minute mark, right, maybe I look at this and say, oh, Suicide Squad, AAA game. He did all of this for it. Okay, nice. Gods of Egypt did this. Okay. I'm in recruiter mode right now. Okay. Once I've looked at 3 projects and seen these bold highlights, now I'm invested. Now the portfolio can reel me in. The next one I look at, or maybe I go back to this. Now I will read this text. Now I'm invested enough to care about this text. So I think this separation between bolded bullet points and this really light main text, I think this works really well. The next one I wanted to talk about was this one. Let's head back to homepage. Right. So this is super minimalist. It's not everybody's style, but I think what it does really well is it has a decent about. You have your social bar, all of this stuff, and the projects are decently done. So this doesn't have videos on the front page. I still feel like the images are good enough to kind of grab attention. They're very well placed, large images. The links to the actual portfolio page is quite visible. And when you head there, you do get videos. Exactly. So over here, you have tons of GIFs, tons of videos, YouTube embeds, and so on. I also like the portfolio page here, where it basically talks about all the key information about your game, like release, studio, platforms, team size, project length. So this is very easily skimmable. And I also wanted to showcase this portfolio for its development process deep dive. So this page pretty much assumes that your recruiter is already in the invested stage. You're reeling them in at this point. They've already spent 1 minute on your homepage. They've seen these. They've probably read some of this copy over here, spent a minute on this maybe, and now they want to know more. And I think this format is a great way to write a process page. So you can see that you have a summary here. So mentioning what you're going to talk about. And then you have project goals. I think when writing process, it's really important to talk about project goals because your project goals are what you're going to be evaluated on. For example, if you make a really short game, or let's say you make a really unpolished looking game, if you mention that your project goal was, I wanted to make a minimalist game in 2 days, then the way that someone looks at the rest of the project will be very different. Because if you wanted to make a simple game in 2 days and it looks unpolished, it doesn't matter. You still hit your project goal. Your project goal was not to make it look polished. Your project goal was to make it in 2 days, which is an achievement. So talking about your project goals shows that you have focus. It shows that you had something focused in mind before you started the project, and that you systematically worked towards achieving that goal through your process. So I think that goal focus is an important thing to show. And this is a long read, so I'm not going to stick on it for too long. But I was not invested in this person personally, but I read through this whole thing just because it's so nicely written. And it's a good example of how visuals tie into text. So this whole section is essentially about why this poster was important to the process. Essentially, the fact that they designed the poster first and then design the game based on the poster rather than the other way around, where you design the game and then make the poster. So you have the visual clearly tied to the text. And it was a pretty entertaining story. It definitely got me very invested in this person's creative process. Then you see these are work in progress. So you can see how it goes from a 2-second sketch to something more detailed to image board to final product. So these kind of work in progress kind of progression shots are really nice for showing the process. Similarly here, you have world building. So keep in mind that all of this will be seen by a recruiter only if they are already hooked. So don't put this stuff on your front page. This should be tucked away somewhere in the back in the read more section where the already hooked recruiter now wants to know your process. But once they do, these kind of visual sketches of your work, if you're on the creative side, are extremely, they're eye-catching. People want to know the process behind creating the polished thing at the end, and seeing this makes them feel like they have an insight into that process. So you have text copy, you have these defining the tone and aesthetic, your mood board references. All of this is material for your portfolio. Don't throw any of it away after you're done. Also, do make an effort to show things that didn't work. In this, don't show it on your main page. In your process page, you should try to show things that didn't work. For example, in this case, this was the final character design. This was a rejected character design. And it's rejected because it looked too mature or too, steampunk grungy, which didn't go with the childish vibe. To me, this shows that this person is not only creative, but they're also able to objectively evaluate their own work and pick the best out of it to move forward. That shows me that they're not just an artist, they are also a producer. They are also an all-round game professional who can prioritize the game itself. So yes, it's a very long read. You don't need to put this much in your project page, in your process page. I think if you just have like maybe this 2 pages of text, good enough for me. But this shows that if you write a good process page, if it's an entertaining read, you can just go on and it will still work well. All right, having covered that, we are well into the session. So I'm going to now, oh shit. How do I get back to meeting controls? I think I hit them. There we go. I got scared that the video stopped. Okay, Paul has got to head out now. Have a great rest of class, and you're talking to. Thank you so much. Okay, how many participants do we have left? 20. Okay, good. Moving on to the meat of the session, we spent a long time analyzing the portfolios. Now we're actually going to make one. So first, this is the part of the session which is practical. So I will be making a portfolio right here before your eyes, and you will be following along. So get your browsers out, and when I do something, I will leave a couple of minutes for the class to catch up, and then move on. So let me know in case you're lagging behind, in case you need some more time to do something or you need clarification, just let me know in chat. I will check and make sure I wait for you before I continue. So your first step here is Wix. So I'm sorry for autocorrect. You are first going to want to create an account here. So typically this will lead you to a sign-in page. You will need to sign in, make an account before you can start creating a new site. Once you get to this page, you can create new site, and I will take it from there. Let me know in the chat when everyone is done with making the account and when everyone is looking at this page. Nick is done. I'm going to move ahead in 30 seconds. Let me know when you guys are done. If anybody is not done in 30 seconds, just feel free to point it out before. Okay, seems like most people are done. If anyone else is left, message in case that you're still lagging behind, or if you're having any troubles with signing in, just post a message and we can look at it. Let's wait for another couple of seconds. I think I spent more time than intended on some of the portfolios, but I was getting some good audience feedback. So I think that was valuable to spend the time on. But as a result, we will be doing this a little bit faster so that we can at least see a computer. So moving on, what kind of website are you creating? You are creating a portfolio. So here you have options for portfolio. Game design portfolio isn't applicable to everyone. So just hit next. What Wix will typically do is it will show you a whole bunch of templates. But today we're not going to be using a template. For learning purposes, I prefer starting from a blank template just because it gives you more control over the process. When you're actually making your portfolio, feel free to use a template if you need to, because it speeds a lot of things up. So today I'm going to call this my, let's call it, well, first of all, I did send a message earlier, which had folders of sample material to download. I'm going to forward that message again. Let me just copy and paste. So this is the stage where everyone pretty much has to download this. Make sure you have the materials on it. Is there anyone who hasn't downloaded it already? Okay, looks like everyone, I'm assuming everyone has it. If someone doesn't have it, just ping me and then I can wait. So over here, we have essentially files, which are for an imaginary character who I have called Level Designer. She's a level designer. She has some facts about her written in the About Me PDF over there. So today we're going to be building a sample portfolio for her. Essentially, this is the same process that you'll be using for your own portfolio. But since not everyone has material on hand, which they can build a portfolio with, this should give you a little head start. So the assets used are from Unity standard projects. Fair warning, don't use Unity standard projects in your portfolio because those assets are recognizable anywhere. And, everyone knows that this is a Unity standard project. It's not ideally use a less known asset if you are using assets. But for this purpose, we're going to assume that this is a custom game created by Lavelle and shown on a portfolio. So I will enter a name and hit next. Okay. So over here, you have these things you can add, blog, and so on. We're not going to be messing with this today, but you can add it to your portfolio. All right. Next. Okay. So when you get to this page, to start designing your site, I'm going to click begin with a template. Once we get here, there are a lot of dramatic templates here. You can see very glitzy templates, stuff that kind of attracts the eye. But for this particular class, I'm going to go with a minimalist template, simply so that you can focus on the projects and less on dealing with the intricacies of UI and web design. So I'm going to navigate here to blank templates. And I am going to move to, let's go to strip header layout. So strip header layout is the one I'm using over here. It's the fifth in the list, and I'm going to edit. So once you edit this, this sets up your site, and now you can start adding content to it. So fair warning here, I am not a web designer. I'm not a UX designer. Most of the time, if I'm making a site in 1 hour like I am doing now, it's going to look pretty crappy. At least I'm making it as minimalist as possible to avoid that. Point being that you don't have to take UX or web design lessons from me. This workshop is mostly about content. So I'm going to be focusing on the content that you put in your portfolio. But once you actually have the content in there, feel free to spice it up, right? You can add animations for text. You can have elements coming from the side, coming from the bottom, coming from the top, whatever you want. But it's not highly essential for this. All right. For some reason, I'm zoomed in quite a bit. Yeah, I'm going to stick to 100%. All right. So first thing to bring in is content. So I'm going to start by uploading a photo for the about. So here to upload that, you use this plus symbol right on the side, add elements, click on it, add an image. And when you add an image, upload image from your computer. So this should open up a little file dialog for you where you can upload from computer. I'm going to open up my let me actually share my screen because I'm going to be interacting. Okay, so now I'm sharing my entire screen. You will probably see Zoom interfering with some things, but I can then show you file windows as well. So let me know when everyone's looking at the news. Also, once more, if I'm moving too fast or if there's something that you're stuck on, need some time, just message in the chat. And this class proceeds at the pace of the slowest. All right, I'm assuming everyone can see the stream, and perfect. So here I'm going to upload from computer. Under my sample portfolio content, I'm going to open the information about the person we're making a portfolio for, Lavelle Design. No pun intended. Okay, I missed it. Okay, I should have included a little stock image here. My bad, but you can pretty much add whatever image you want. I'm just going to maybe send a link in the chat. Downloads. Yeah, this was the stock image I used. So let me just quickly upload this to a link and you guys can use it. Alrighty, so now in Zoom, so I've added the drive folder. The link is here. You guys can download just to, we all want our portfolio to look like the person. Okay, so over here, if you guys have gotten the image, access denied. Okay, thank you for that. Thanks for that. Looks like I have to share. Anyone with the link can view. Done. Okay, try now, and it should be. Sure, thanks for sticking along with me. Sorry we took so long to get to the actual practical stuff. But yeah, hopefully you can follow along with the video. Alrighty then. Sam, all right, thumbs up. Okay, so now I'm going to upload an image from here. Uh, okay, it should be. All right, so now you select this, add to page. Now we have an image. I'm going to put it in this little about page here. And over here on the design tab, I'm just going to add a frame so that we can frame it nicely. Maybe a little circle. So keep in mind, you don't need to follow through with every single one of the steps. Something like this, maybe. Yeah. So essentially the steps I did for anyone watching along is design, to pick a frame, and then crop, just put it into a reasonable size. So you can see that Wix basically uses a lot of UI drag and drop tools, and you can get things working that way. All right, moving on. The next thing I'm going to do is, this is way too much text for a game portfolio about. So let's delete it. Here, I'm just going to add a title. After our lovely heroine. And maybe we add a subtitle. So over here, essentially, I'm going to, yeah. For the about, I have a little interactive exercise. So let's say we head into our content. Under level designer, we have an about me PDF. So let me know if you guys can see that. All right, perfect. So over here, we have a whole bunch of facts about her. I've just kind of listed down things that people would normally say about themselves. So in the short about section in your portfolio, which of these do you think you should include? Type it in the chat if you think you know out of this information, which pieces are most relevant to be included in the about section of the portfolio, right at the top of the page. Any ideas? Anyone? I enjoy making games that tell story with my pen. Definitely. I think that's a very key value. And that's something that essentially tells people in very few words who you are. So yes, that's one. Active community organizer. Yeah, I think it's probably worth putting there. But I think my judgment would be that if you are aiming for a community organizer role, then I would put active community organizer. If that's not the role you're aiming for, if it's just something that you also do alongside your main job, then I wouldn't put it in the about because you have very limited space. You want the about to set context for your projects. Essentially, you want it to say, I am so and so, this is who I am, this is what I do, these are my values, and now in that context, here are my projects. So out of the three, we have values, right? Value is I enjoy making games that tell a story with the environment. We're still missing two, which is essentially who I am and what I do. Do you see those two in this list? Yeah, I think name and ideal role would be my picks. Game jams and hobby dev for 3 years is good as well. I definitely that's part of who I am. As in, I am a hobby dev with 3 years of experience. I think that's worth putting down. But I think the key points is basically what Esme said. Name and ideal role. You want to mention ideal role because your recruiter is going to be evaluating your whole portfolio based on that. They're going to see, okay, this is the role this person is gunning for, and then, for example, in this case, if it's level ideal role is junior level design, then they will be looking at your entire portfolio based on that. When writing in the about, I would avoid mentioning that this is your ideal role. I would just say that I am a level designer because for some reason, I think people tend to be more impressed by what you say you are than what you say you want to be. But it definitely doesn't hurt to say that you're looking for a professional role or looking to grow. So again, I'm going to keep it really simple here. I'm just going to say, you say who you are. Hi, I'm Lavelle. That's your name. And then you say, I'm a level designer who loves to make games that tell a story with their environment. So this is a perfectly valid about section. If you want to include the hobby dev, you could say, I'm a level designer with years of experience as a something like this, and then say, I love. So this is fine as well. If you want the more minimalist one, you just do this. Personally, I'm partial to the shorter one, so I'm going to keep that, but it's pretty much up to you. All right. Moving on, this about section is too big. So I'm going to essentially talk about some of the ways to move things around in Wix. So it's stuff you can figure out, but the key point is you click on a selection and then hover over here right at the bottom where you get the special cursor, and then you can simply drag and resize things however you want them to. It can be a little iffy at first. So for example, for some reason it's not letting me resize this. Why not? I won't let me. Hang on. Oh, okay. It's because of the button over here. Yeah, this button is the culprit. It won't let you resize something which goes over something else. I'm going to pull this all the way up here. Now it should. Yeah. Let's make the image a bit smaller as well. Need something here big. Oh. Yeah. This looks a little bit more reasonably sized. So if you've gotten this far, great. There are small tweaks you can make, like there's too much space here, too little space here. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to trust that you will know how to figure this stuff out, how to adjust margins and so on. Let's change the site name. So that's maybe we put that over here, below that. Or yeah, something. Drop the font size a bit. But yeah, obviously the header can be a lot more attractive. But for now, I'm just going to leave it. If it works, it's not broken for the purposes of the class. All right. So small changes aside, this portfolio that we'll be making will be a one-page scrolling portfolio. Normally, this would be the part where you put, if you were doing a portfolio in Colleen style, like this one. you would be putting these buttons. Why you gotta? You will be putting these buttons over here. Today, since we'll be making a scrolling one more in my style, I am going to go over here to pages and menu. Having gone here, I'm simply going to delete all of these pages by clicking the menu button and then delete. Yes, confirm, confirm, confirm. I'm also going to delete the portfolio. Uninstall Wix portfolio. So Wix throws in a bunch of plugins for you. Portfolio plugin is one of them. Personally, I think it's overcomplicated. Portfolios don't need to be that complicated. So my preference would be just to go with a blank page. All right, is everyone following along? If anyone still needs time, just let me know. Okay, we're good. I'm assuming everyone else is following along. And let's once again. So the next thing to do is essentially to duplicate this section. The way Wix works is you have essentially a series of sections. So you see this section is called intro. And the sections can be reordered in any form. So this is pretty helpful for a portfolio. So to duplicate the section, I'm going to click the section and then head to this little side menu here and duplicate. So that creates a new section right away. For this section, I'm going to delete Lavel's image. Right click, delete. And now instead, I'm going to set up a little video box. So this is going to be the visual lure, which draws a recruiter into your project. So the first project that we're going to do is from sample portfolio content. If you open the folder, head to game stuff, it's going to be Dave Orange's Spooky Stroll. So over here, you can see this little gameplay file here. I believe you can simply take the MP4, drag and drop. Can you do that? Maybe not, maybe not. Okay, forget that. Instead, add elements over here, plus symbol. Over here, you have video and music. From where we go to video upload, this big button. Drag it, drop it in this column on the right side. And now we hit change video. Once we change video, this opens up our site files where we can now upload media. So this is similar to the previous procedure. You go in, Dave Orange's Spooky Stroll, gameplay video. So thankfully my internet is fast today. It uploaded fairly fast. If others need a little bit more time, do let me know in the chat. All right, I'm going to wait about 10 seconds. And yeah, assuming that most people have it downloaded. So I'm going to click this, add to page. And done. We have a video here. Now the key settings on this video, if you head to settings panel right here, we want to enable autoplay and we want to enable play in a loop. This is because this is again, why do we want to set autoplay and play in a loop? What do you guys think? Answers in the chat if you can. Minimal clicks, grab attention faster. Perfect. Full marks to Esme and Sam. That's exactly what I mean. When you do this, what you can do right now doesn't show anything on the page, but you have this little button over here called preview. Once you hit preview, now you see. When I scroll down, as soon as I scroll down, the video starts playing immediately, which again just grabs attention a lot faster. You can instantly see the gameplay of the game, and now you're instantly invested. You want to know more about what's going on here. So back to the editor. Now we're going to change the text over here. Edit text. I'm going to change the heading to something a little smaller, maybe heading 2. Let's enter the name of the project. If anyone is curious about the name of the project, the original Unity project is called John Lemon's Haunted Jaunt. So this is my attempt at making it recognizable that I'm not ripping it off. Over here, for this text, I'm going to switch it to paragraph, make it fairly small, and delete the contact button. So now it's time for content. So here, I would like to do another interactive exercise. This is essentially something like a demo reel. Even your demo reels, if you set them to autoplay, a demo reel is essentially, lots of your shorter projects squashed into one big video. Those should also be set to autoplay, just so that it grabs attention. But keep them fairly small. I think when really big size videos autoplay, they slow down the site, and they can be visually a bit too glaring. But I think the small video should not be an issue. So now, content, right? I'm going to move over to game stuff, Dame Orange's Spooky Stroll, description, and open this PDF, right? So over here, you see that I have a couple of key facts about the game. So usually when I want to put a game in my portfolio, I make a small document like this just to remind myself. If I have to describe this game to somebody, what would I describe? So key facts is essentially the key statistics about the game. What's the genre? What's the perspective? How big is it? Where is it published? How long did it take to make? What's the team size? What achievement did it have? What tools was it made with? These are all relevant things to talk about. Here's a description of gameplay. I have just some bullet points here. And here's what I did. So in this description, usually the first thing I want to talk about is what is the game. So that is essentially a combination of gameplay and key facts. So I think the most important thing is just to identify gameplay. So over here, I'm just going to summarize these points into a one-line description of what this game is. That's going to be a spooky stealth game where you what do you do here? Where you navigate a haunted mansion without getting caught by enemies. That's a decent enough thing, but you can combine things to try and essentially think of it as a bit like marketing copy. You are, in some sense, marketing your project to a potential recruiter. So feel free to add whatever text you want on your own version of this website. I'm going to go with a spooky stealth game where you escape a haunted mansion while avoiding its sinister inhabitants. Nice. So we've got this little patch of text here. So now we know what the title of the game is, what the game is about, kind of. What's the next part? What else would you want to write about this game from this material over here? Answers in the chat. Awards. Perfect. Exactly. You want to know why is this game important to you? And a good part of that is awards. So in this case, this game was made for the Spooky September Game Jam, and it placed 5th. This is text we can directly copy and put over here. I think another part of why it's important to you is simply how long the project took. In this case, this was a month-long project, which represents a serious investment from your side of time and effort. So I would say, I think team size is another important thing to talk about when you're talking about why this project is important. So over here, you can say this is a stealth game made with two friends. So that's essentially including you. That's a team of three. So to weave it together into recruiter speak, uh, project made in a team of three within 1 month for the spooky September game jam. And placed fifth in community rankings. So this is, I'm going to reduce the font size a tiny bit. Yeah, something like this. So this essentially tells you why is this game important. It's important because A, you made it with a team. So that showed you that you could collaborate with others. Made it within 1 month. In other words, you could complete it within a deadline. And it received you made it for a game jam and it received awards. So this tells us recruiter why this game is important, not only to you, but also to them. Third thing, what's the next thing on the list? Essential text that needs to be there for every single game. Every time you describe your game, exactly. Esme gets the award. What role did you play? So here I usually just like to go with bullet points. So what I did, or you could even say, my role, whichever you like. Here I'm going to use bullet points and I'm going to copy some of them. So here it's fairly informal language. For a portfolio, if you want to be a little bit more formal, you can make sure because remember, your audience is not a casual audience. Your audience is a recruiter. A recruiter typically knows more technical language than you do. So as long as you don't overdo it, you don't have to be afraid of using technical language to show that you know the lingo of your vertical. So in this case, let's say design the levels. So yes, so designed and implemented, let's say how many levels were in the game? 5 levels. All right. 5 unique levels. The next would be help to come up with the concept. So that is contributed to forming the game's original concept. Again, I'm just taking the language and making it slightly more technical to kind of show that you do have your foothold, you know the terms that the industry uses. Thanks a lot for sticking around, Blue. We should be wrapping up in another 20 minutes or so. All right, so there's my role. And there we have, what next? Placed enemies and designed their patrol paths. This can go in exactly as it is. And finally, we have playtested the game and improved it with feedback. All right. There we go. And there you have your text. This is pretty much all the text you need to introduce your game. Thanks a lot, Kirk. And yeah, have a good sleep. Sorry it's so late for you. For me, it's my morning. I'm just about getting started with the day. I woke up early for this one. Noor, do you have a question? Go ahead. You just need to type it in the chat. You don't need to ask if you can ask. Thanks, Vicky. Noor, I'm going to get back to your question since we're a little short on time, but drop it in the chat. Um, yeah, I heard this question before. I'm going to reach out to you as soon as the class is over. If you can send me a direct message with your contact information, so that would be Discord or some other channel, I will reach out to you on this as soon as the class is over. Just because it's slightly outside of the topic of the main class, I just want to make sure we finish on time. Alrighty then. So here I have a description, and typically there is one other important part of what goes on here. I'm going to add a little bit more space for that thing in particular. What else is missing here? In the chat, what else would you want to add to complete this project essentially? Link to play game. Yes. Animations are over here in the video. This will actually play. But what I'm going to do now is simply go to add elements, and I'm going to add a button. So I like this button. I'm going to just drop it right here in this column, and I can change the design a little bit. Hit design tab over here, customize design. And over here, I just want to change. I find it a little too blue. So I'm just going to change the text color to darker one. Change the border color to dark. There we go. And here I can now change the text icon, this button over here, where I'm going to say play in browser. So typically this would be an itch.io link. You click here, you head to itch.io, and you can now play the game. So ideally, it would also have a process page. We may not have time to fully do the process page today, so I may just show it to you guys. But here, we may have a button called project breakdown. I have to expand that button a little bit. But yeah, here we have a project breakdown, and we can then click on this to actually read more about this project. So here we have introduction, header, and we have the first project. What we can do now is simply take this, more actions, duplicate, and just apply this for the next game. We just go through the same steps again, where we change video and upload the next media. So in this case, this is going to be game stuff, the navigator gameplay. I'm just going to upload that. All right. Once it's uploaded, I am going to add to page. Okay, now I have this video. I can change the content, the navigate. So now I'm just going to take some suggestions again to replace this. So this time I'm going to leave it up to the audience. If you move over to the navigator folder, game stuff, the navigator PDF. Once more, we have key facts, gameplay, what I did. Open up the PDF, and I want to write one line for this, describing this game in a quick sentence. What should I write? Feel free to type it in the chat. Any suggestions? One sentence that I can write to describe what this game is. All right, Sam's got something. 2D side scroller where you battle robots, guard spikes, and explore the world through quests to find the alien scrolls. Wonderful. Short enough, sweet enough, and it fits nicely here. Next, what would I write to show why this game is important to you and why it's important for the recruiter who's looking? Ariane. All right. Solo project for Windy Game Academy Level 2 program, won the Level 2 program's judging awards. Nice. Yep, that should be it. Let me copy and paste that. All right, this Windy Game Academy Level 2 program sounds really unrelated. And finally, my role. I think here it's possible to simply cut and paste. I didn't make it too complicated. But maybe let's see what the class has to say when it comes to how would you rewrite this in a more technical format that shows that you know what you do. Oh, hello, Willem's here. Hello. Thanks for the vote of confidence, everyone. All right, Sam has an answer. Narrative and story design, level design, built levels, and improved assets found. It's a decent start. I'm going to copy paste that, and then I'm going to make some changes. All right. First of all, let me fix this font size. There we go. So in this case, this was a solo project. So essentially, you know that you pretty much did everything. It's probably clear to everyone. I would say level design and built levels would kind of maybe come together. How did I? Yeah, I think a lot of this could actually, I mean, honestly, be lifted exactly as it is. Um, so I'm just going to combine these two, designed and built levels in Unity. So here I'm mentioning the engine simply because if someone's hiring a level designer specifically for Unity, this shows that these levels were built in Unity. You know, this person knows how to do stuff in Unity. I'd also include the engine over here somewhere. I forgot that. I'm also, instead of found assets on the Unity Asset Store, let's make it sound fancy, right? Identified suitable assets. Could actually even combine these two. So over here, this kind of takes a simple sentence saying like I found assets from the asset store, which is the truth. But here, this kind of the aim is to kind of show what you did, show what you did differently, how you added value to them. So in this case, think about it from a recruiter's point of view. Identifying suitable assets to build a level with is a skill. Taking them and improving them, using and extending them with your own 2D artwork is a skill. So this takes something that you just found online, and this now makes it into a skill that you can actually market yourself with. So I think that pretty much covers everything. This can be expanded a bit more later, but given the amount of time we have left, I'm willing to leave it at this. So again, if you want to duplicate, you can just keep duplicating these strips and making as many projects as you want. And this just becomes a very easily scrollable. So to sum things up, given that we're close to end of time, I will show the project breakdown sometime towards the end, but a couple of important things to think about just before you wrap up. Prettifying this thing, making it look a little better is all part of it. But one most important thing is contact information. Someone who's looking at your portfolio needs to know how to contact you, and that information needs to be everywhere. It needs to be accessible, it needs to be jumping out at you from the bottom, from the header, from the sidebar. So here we have a contact button here. That's a good start. I also like to put an email and contact in the top over here. So in this case, for example, I might realign this thing to the side. Let's edit the text. Knock it here. Let's maybe realign this text also to the side. And then I'm going to add an email instead. Which in this case is, I'm just going to add something. Again, not too fancy, not too beautiful, but it gets the job done. To show that this is an email, it's a great place to use an icon. So here you have add elements, image, and you can scroll down to show free Wix illustrations. Wix does come with a pretty big library over here. So just by filter vector art, you can get lots of free icons to spice up your web page. So here I'm going to search for email, and ta-da! I think this little minimalist icon works quite well. Let's shrink this, and pop it right here. Obviously, the scale is quite off, but something. This needs to be shrunk. Yeah, whatever. So here we go. So there's contact here. The next thing to do, you have the social bars on the side. You can click on this and you can set your links. So for each item, add a link. Change the ones if you don't like them. Twitter is now a big X. They haven't updated that. Instagram, you can add a LinkedIn here. I like to add my itch.io and GitHub as well, just so that people have a lot of places to check your stuff out. And finally, at the bottom, I'm going to add a section. which is the contact section. So Wix has these pre-designed sections as well. I'm going to pick this one, maybe this one. Yeah, this one. So let's drag and drop. And there we go. Let's remove the unnecessary stuff. You don't want to show people your address on a portfolio. Don't want creeps showing up at the door. Personally, I don't leave my phone number either because the internet is full of bots that will scrape all your personal information. I will put my email address and I will also put my social bio. There we go. That's and this is contact form. And we remove this thing on the bottom. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Select the line. Select this, delete, select this. And let's pull this up. So there are some small tweaks you can do to make this look better. This section is a bit too big. You can use these arrows over here to change the section height. Also remember that if you want to change the order of your projects, you can enter the quick edit mode here. Not quick edit mode. Yes, this move section down. Supposing I want Navigator, I think this is a better project. I want this to show up first and recruiters to see this one first. Hit move section up and ta-da. This is now your first project. This is your bottom project. So now we have contact information. We have a social bar on the side, a big email thing on the top, contact information at the bottom. Now, no one is going to get away with seeing your really good projects and not being able to contact, because that would be a shame. The final thing that I'm probably going to talk about is mobile layout. So you're primarily building for PC, but the fact is, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of recruiters are just going to be really, really busy people. Maybe they're eating lunch, maybe they're on their way to work, and they want to quickly glance at your portfolio. In that case, your mobile layout over here needs to be optimized. So Wix automatically creates a mobile layout for you, but it doesn't always do it that well. So as you notice here, it's a bit of a hot, steaming mess. But the good news is you can make changes here directly to your mobile layout, and they don't affect your PC. So the desktop layout stays the same, but I can tweak some of these things. Maybe I just want to pull this up. Can I pull this up further? No. Hang on. What's up? What's up? Can I move this section down? No. Yeah, this is not my favorite user interface. But for our purposes, this works. Okay. And we pull the whole section up now. Perfect. All right, so we have this, we have the contact. Most likely you'll just need to make these small changes where you change the size of the columns because Wix tends to mess that up. One reason I like to use the column layout is just so that Wix handles mobile a bit better with the column layout. Like the projects are perfect, right? You have description, video, play, description, video, play, and this works perfect. The contact form is fine as well. I would make small changes, put this here. But, because we use the column layout, Wix knows how to do this well. If we put everything on the same page, the mobile layout is horrendous and becomes hard to optimize. So this essentially covers a lot of the content for them. We're pretty much out of time. What I am going to do is showcase this. Let me quickly pull this in. Can I pull this here? There you go. So this was the site that I made just before the class, which is slightly more polished. And I just wanted to showcase how it's intended to look. So we have the horizontal menu here, which you can add. What you can do there is you can add sections of your thing. So for example, this section over here, I added it through this manage menu over here, which means that now anyone who clicks projects directly goes to your projects. It's right there, but in case they can't see the big word project and they want to click here, they might as well. The other thing I added was the beginning of a project breakdown. This is the one. So you can see here, I've adopted a similar style to the previous portfolio we looked on. So define your project goals, talk about your concept, and feel free to add little sketches here, right? You have show your initial concept and then show the final thing work next to it. Show your initial idea here. So the goal is essentially to show the process, show every stage of things, how you started from the basics, moved on to a gray box, then moved on to your final quality, so that people are convinced that you made this and you know what you're doing. I think that should be it. There's a lot more to do with Wix, but I think the rest of it is stuff that you guys can figure out. You're going to be a lot more creative than I can be with this minimalist portfolio. Wix has templates. Wix has tons of features. You can just look at this list of elements and options, and you know that there's a lot to explore. So there's a lot of power here, but it's also possible, like I've shown here, to make a pretty decent minimalist portfolio in less than 1 hour. You can also head to site my dashboard, and here you have a couple more settings. Here is where you can actually set custom domains, look at your analytics, see how many people are looking at your portfolio, manage your SEO. You can make sure you get found via the web. And finally, you publish your site with this button. Once everything is perfectly done, click this button and your site will be ready to use. Here, I'm not hitting publish yet, but yep, this is essentially what the finished site will look like. And there we are. Projects, videos that autoplay. So these people can get a good lure, good text that shows exactly what you did, why the project is important to you, what the project is about. That's the hook. And finally, more projects to show breadth, as well as project breakdowns once you're reeling them in, and once you're really getting the recruiter to understand the extent of your awesome skills. So that pretty much concludes it. We're about 8 minutes over time. Sorry for that. I know it's late for everyone in the EST time zone, but I am open for any final questions. And yes, Emir Mahi Usal, can you please also send your main portfolio website just as a reference? I'm going to do more than that. I have a little link here called Portfolio Resources, which has a whole bunch of things that I didn't cover in this call. So I'm just going to link that document. Anyone with the link can view, and I'm going to post it in Zoom. Can I expand? Here we go. Oh, sorry, that's a direct message. Let me send it again in the group chat. There we go. So this handy document has the list of all the portfolios that we analyzed today, including my own portfolio. It has a list of tools that you can use to actually capture the footage. We didn't cover that in this class, but there are screen recording tools, video editing tools, a list of platforms, as well as some places where you can get feedback on your portfolios. The work with Indie server is great for that. Our own IGA Discord is great for that. So do check it out. I will be posting the link in IGA's Discord as well, so you won't lose it if you miss it. So yeah, any final questions before we turn it over to Willem for his closing. Thanks a lot, Esme. Yes, I did want to show a bunch of different portfolios and styles because I'm aware that my style or what I do with my portfolio might not suit everyone. There's so many different verticals, so many different needs. Glad you enjoyed. And Sam, yes, this is not something I would charge for. Please send your portfolios over. I'll be happy to do a light critique anytime. This is something I do. I do a lot. I get asked a lot, and it's not a problem. I genuinely enjoy it. And yes, how could I forget? Right before I pass it over to Willem, homework. The homework is pretty simple. We went through the steps to make something on Wix today. You know how to upload things, how to write text. I want you to do this for your own projects now. So record your own footage, put up a portfolio with 3 of your best projects in this really simple format. As we saw today, it takes less than an hour. If you have to take footage, maybe it takes you an hour and a half at the maximum. If you do that, you have, honestly, in my opinion, a very serviceable, very usable portfolio that you can make in 1.5 hours. And from there, it's your choice. You can post it in IGA for feedback. I'll be happy to review it. And you can expand on it as much as you like. Prettify it, use Wix templates, use Wix features, make it nice and pretty. But even a minimalist one, it just works. So that's the homework. I'll be very glad and happy to review it for you guys if you post it in the IGA server. I believe we have, Willem has just linked it, a Portfolio Madness channel specifically for posting. Yes, that's the one again. Yeah.
I'm just going to go ahead and say this is required. It is required homework. When you do your portfolio, please post that. Not please, do post in the Portfolio Madness channel. Otherwise, why were you here this whole time?
And yeah, and all of you do get a portfolio review from me on the house. I'll try my best to keep up with the numbers. I think we have enough numbers for me to give a personal review for you. All right, Willem, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Is it as late for all of you as it is for me? What time is it for you, Surya?
It's 7 in the morning. I've been doing this since 4:30.
Oh my God. All right, well, let's all give one serious, stern round of applause for Surya. Thank you, Surya. That was awesome. I want to see clapping. Ricky, where's your clapping? Come on, my guy. Let me see it. There we go. Thank you, Surya.
Thank you so much. Class to the class. I think the class has been really, really interactive this time. I was kind of worried it would just be me droning on and on, but I got tons of interactivity, tons of feedback. I couldn't thank you guys more.
Awesome. That's great. How did Surya do? Thumbs up, thumbs down, middle, a little halfway. Awesome. Good. 100 out of 10. Goodness. Wow. Thumbs up. Fantastic. That's great to hear. All right. Well, I'm not going to take much of y'all's time. I just wanted to hop on so that there's a little, sense of continuity. Got to see all of your lovely faces for a moment here. Got to see Surya closing down. And it's just motivated and inspired. I got right to the portfolio design. Good. I'm glad to hear that, Nicholas. I just wanted to come in here and basically give you a little kick. Portfolios are the number one thing that I recommend to people. And the number one thing that we consistently talk about and consistently hear from other people is an important part of what's going to get you hired in this industry. I do often anywhere between like 3 and like 8 career consultations every single week. And I've been doing that now basically since IGA started. So I've talked to a lot of people, and I talked to, smart people too, not just those trying to break in. That sounded rude. I didn't mean it that way. And including, one of our recent connections is Justin Williams, who's a senior recruiter at Blizzard. And so I also get the perspective from pros who really have the knowledge, and portfolios are one of those consistent things we just hear over and over again. So many of you, just got a really wonderful introduction on how to make a portfolio that is realistic. You don't need programming experience. You don't need to make anything fancy. So what I would like to see out of every single one of you is a finished portfolio. I'd love to see you share it around, and then I would love to see you bring this knowledge and this energy out to the rest of the community and to other people in your life as well. So if there's somebody who needs advice, tell them some of the stuff that you just learned here, give them some of your thoughts on their own portfolios, etc. That's part of how we keep IGA a magical place, but also how you keep your own lives and your own communities wonderful space. Remember, as I always say, culture is a mirror. It's very, very true. So that's my little prompt. I'm going to invite you. We have our IGA level 2 class starting next week. If anyone is like really hungry, I think actually Nicholas just accepted his, just confirmed that he's coming, which is awesome. If anyone's feeling really hungry to get into a deep dive and a guided program that will force you to finish and release a game that you can put on your portfolio, we highly recommend it. It is a, I'll give a brief little, I'm going to do like the 2-minute version of this, the 1-minute version of this. Here, so this is the actual, this is how the class works. This is what it is. It's a tech tool deep dive. So basically what we've decided, it's modified a bit since the last time we ran this. It still teaches you a bit about your verticals, but we're doing that in a different way this time around. The main thing is this is a month-long tech tool deep dive. So you're going to get acquainted with the Unity game engine, valuable information for any vertical, not just engineering. You're going to get acquainted with source control, essential tool. This is another one of those ones I hear from everybody. If you don't know how to use Git and source control, go figure it out. And then ticketing, which is also just how the game industry tracks stuff. You'll build a fully featured real-time strategy, a Clash Royale clone. You get to work on your own vertical. We're basically trying to get you enough experience so you can work on your own games, and we finish right before Ludum Dare, so you can jump in on a project. Starts the 29th, next Tuesday. It is 2 hours, Tuesday and Thursday nights. We have this cool story from Andy Lee. I'm not going to talk about it. Here's some of the cool games that got built in the last level 2s. Your professor this time is Rick Williams. I'm very excited to have Rick teach. He's a just like foundational member of IGA, always around, always answering questions, and is just an incredible go-getter. The dude is smart as heck. I learned so much from him. So some of the new stuff that we haven't really announced or talked about yet, you're going to receive 28 videos along with your level 2 regular classes. There are 8 live classes. That's what we've been talking about already for a while. We've now also added 4 live co-working sessions. So it's actually 3 2-hour sessions every week. So 6 hours of class time every week. 2 of those hours, though, are unstructured, just time for you to hang out with your coworkers. And we've now hired a dedicated Unity TA, so somebody to help teach you that isn't Rick, an additional voice in the room, and these 28 videos that introduce you to your vertical. So this is how we are transitioning the vertical speak. So if you're trying to learn what a visual designer does, you're going to receive 4 videos, 1 per week, that kind of walk you through getting up to speed in that field. The price hasn't changed for the class. So this is what it's been forever now. It's $1,200 paid in installments. Generally, that's 25% every 4 months, so $300 every month for 4 months. You can, if you do one-time payment, cut that down by 20%, and there are scholarships available if you want to apply. So I'm going to drop the application link, but if you're looking for somebody to handhold you and walk you exactly through creating a portfolio game, it's there. It's there for you. How do I stop sharing? Okay, great. Otherwise, tons of events. I'm glad that this seemed to worked out so well that we're running a second one. So if you want to come by and join the second one, you're more than welcome to. We'll have another level 1 coming up sometime soon. There's all kinds of other goodies as well. I'm just so grateful to see IGA grow. It's been just blooming recently, which has been so cool. And part of that is because of all of you wonderful people. So thank you for being here. I think that's all spiel I got. Anybody have any last questions or comments or anything like that? All right. Good, yes.
Fastest you ever done a level 2 rundown. Nice job, William.
What's that?
Seems like that's the fastest you've ever done a level 2 rundown.
Yeah. I didn't want to do that. I'm tired. It's been a long couple of days.
Yeah, I think everyone has. It's been a long day. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Hope
everyone can get some rest.
Yes.
Hope I can get some rest too. And yeah.
Hell yeah.
All the best, everyone.
Have a wonderful one, everyone. I love, Nicholas here says, House Clerics for the win. I love what a good change it was that the entire community gets to compete in that. Hell yeah. I'm not going to say which house I'm behind because I'm not allowed to be biased. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Surya, thank you, man. That's awesome. We're going to definitely have you run more of these. Apply to level 2 if you're considering it. Non-binding to apply. And yeah, have a kick-ass night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye. Adios.